Asterisk, the jungle was not quiet. It was alive with strange calls, rustling leaves, and the deep hum of glowing insects in the air. Giant trees with silver bark rose high above, their leaves forming a roof that blocked most of the sunlight between. The root shadows moved like living things around a campfire. A group of alien hunters sat. Their armor was worn, their weapons sharp, and their faces tense. They were speaking in low voices, almost whispers. Every word was about the same thing: the Gravern. The Gravern was not just an animal, it was a nightmare, taller than a speeder bike. Covered in armored plates with horns like curved blades, its roar could be heard for miles. Its hide could stop bullets, and its claws could cut through metal. No one had ever captured one alive, not even with the best traps. "Did you hear?" one hunter said. "They say a Gravern was seen near the river last night." Another shook his head. Only a fool would go after it. The leader, a tall alien with scars on his face, stared into the fire. A fool. Or someone with a death wish. Then a sound came from the darkness. It was not the roar of a Gravern, nor the call of a jungle bird. It was footsteps, heavy, slow, and steady. The hunters turned, weapons ready. From between the trees, a man stepped out. His clothes were torn, his arms scratched and bleeding. His hands were wrapped in strips of cloth. Behind him, something huge dragged across the ground. It was the Gravern. The creature's head hung low, its eyes half closed. Its breathing was slow, but it was alive. Ropes made of vines and broken branches were tied around its legs and horns. The man was holding one of these ropes in his hand, dragging the beast like a trophy. The hunters froze. No one spoke. No one moved. The man stopped near the fire. He looked at the Gravern, then at the hunters. "It's heavier than it looks," he said. His voice was calm. Almost bored, he dropped the rope. The Gravern's body hit the ground with a heavy thud. Dust rose in the air. The man didn't wait for thanks or questions. He just walked past the hunters. Heading deeper into the jungle, the hunters stared at each other. One finally whispered, "No way. Did he just?" with his bare hands. The leader's eyes narrowed. He had hunted all his life, faced things most beings would run from. But this was something else. He stood and followed the human. Keeping his distance, the others stayed, too shocked to move. The human walked, as if nothing had happened, as if catching the deadliest creature in the galaxy was just another day. His shoulders were broad, his steps strong. There was no sign of fear in him, only a strange calm. The leader thought about the Gravern, about its speed and power. There was no weapon in the man's hands, no armor on his body. How was it possible? The jungle grew thicker. The silver trees gave way to black ones, their roots twisting like snakes. Strange lights blinked in the shadows. The air was warm and heavy. The human stopped for a moment. He looked at something in the darkness, and whatever it was, it stepped back. The leader felt a chill. It was as if the jungle itself respected him. Finally, the man reached a small clearing. He sat on a fallen log and began to clean his wounds with water from a small canteen. The leader stayed hidden, watching. After a long silence, the human spoke without looking up. "You've been following me since the fire." The leader stepped out of the shadows. "I had to see for myself." "See what?" the man asked. "If you're real," the leader said, "or just a story." The human smiled faintly. "What you saw back there was nothing special. Nothing special." The leader said, "You caught a Gravern with your hands." The man shrugged. "It's all about knowing when to move and when to hold on." The leader studied him, trying to read his face. There was no pride, no boasting. Just a man speaking a simple truth. But the leader knew one thing. This human was dangerous. Not because of his strength, but because of his control. A creature like the Gravern could kill a hunter in seconds. Yet this man had not only survived, He had one. The leader made a decision. "Tomorrow, I will bring you before the council." The human looked up. "Why?" "They will want to know how you did it," the leader said. The man's eyes hardened. "And if I don't want to tell them?" "Then they might decide you're too dangerous to live," the leader replied. The human stood, slinging his canteen over his shoulder. "Let them try," he said. Then he walked away into the night. Leaving the leader standing alone, the jungle closed behind him, swallowing him like a shadow. And in that moment, the leader knew this was not the last time. The human would shock the galaxy. The alien city was already waking when the first rumors began to spread. At first it was only whispers in the market, to merchants leaning over their stalls to exchange a quick word. A guard speaking quietly to another at the gate. But soon the whispers became a tide. Sweeping through streets and alleys, they said. A human had walked out of the jungle dragging a gravern behind him, alive, bound only by ropes of vine and broken wood. They said he had no weapons, no armor, and no fear. By the time the sun rose higher, even the children in the slums were shouting. The story, the hunters from the night before swore to anyone who would listen that they had seen it with their own eyes. Some believed him, others laughed, calling it an exaggerated tale to earn free drinks. But those who knew the gravern, who had seen what it could do, did not laugh. Instead, they kept glancing at the jungle on the horizon, as if expecting the man to appear again in the center of the city. The council chamber loomed like a mountain of stone and steel. Inside, alien leaders sat in a circle, their voices sharp with concern. They spoke of the human, debating if he was a threat or a potential asset. Some called for his arrest, others for his recruitment. None agreed on what to do. Outside the chamber, life went on, but it was not normal. Patrols were doubled. Bounty hunters arrived from distant towns, drawn by the promise of coin for capturing the man. Traders brought out strange devices they claimed could track him. One even displayed a long silver chain, saying it was strong enough to hold a gravern in the shadow of a narrow alley. A figure in a dark hood listened to all of it. She moved, silently slipping between crowds, never letting her face be seen when two bounty hunters passed, boasting of how they would catch the human and sell him to the council. She followed without a sound. The bounty hunters made their way to a noisy tavern at the edge of the market. The hooded figure entered after them, blending into the dim corner. They spoke loudly now. No need for whispers here. They had heard from a hunter that the human was still in the jungle. Resting, they planned to track him by night. When he would be tired, the hooded figure turned and left. Moving quickly through the streets, she did not head for the gates. Instead, she went deeper into the city, through passages so narrow only one person could pass at a time. Until she reached a small hidden door, she knocked 3 times, paused, and knocked once more. Inside, the room was lit by faint blue light from a single crystal. A table stood in the center, covered in maps, sketches of creatures, and notes written in 3 languages. The hooded figure pulled back her hood, revealing the sharp, pale features of an alien woman. Her eyes glowed faintly violet, and a thin scar ran from her temple to her jaw. She looked down at a map of the jungle. Her finger traced a path to a marked spot, the place where the hunters had said the human appeared. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She had been studying human strength for years, quietly, secretly, and now the stories were confirming what she already suspected. Outside the city, the human walked along the dirt road leading toward the outer districts. His head was low, his eyes watching every shadow. He had heard the rumors too, not from the market, but from the way strangers stared at him for a moment too long. From the way footsteps seemed to follow him even when the street looked empty. By the time he reached the quieter edge of the city, he knew he was being hunted. He didn't run, he didn't hide. Instead, he sat down on the edge of an old fountain and waited. The first to arrive were 2 bounty hunters with blasters, confident and careless. They told him to surrender, laughing at the idea of him resisting. It took less than a minute for both of them to be on the ground, groaning. One clutched his arm, the other his ribs. The human didn't kill them. He didn't even draw a weapon. He simply walked away, leaving them gasping in the dust. From the shadows across the street, the hooded alien woman watched. She had followed his movements carefully, noting the way he moved, the way he waited for them to attack first, the way he used their strength against them. She could see it now. It wasn't just power. It was something deeper, something even. The Gravern didn't have. That night, the city was restless. The council sent messengers to search for him. Bounty hunters scoured the outskirts. And yet, he slipped away as if the streets themselves opened for him. The hooded woman knew where he was going, not because she could see him, but because she had been there herself. Beyond the outer walls lay the path into the jungle. But this time, the human wasn't heading back to where he caught the Gravern. He was going deeper, toward the ruins where even hunters refused to tread, and as the moon rose, silver light spilling across the leaves. The hooded woman followed, keeping her distance, knowing that whatever happened next could change everything. The galaxy believed about humans. The jungle at night was a different world. The warm air was heavy with mist, and the silver moonlight fell in broken pieces through the tangled branches. Insects whispered in the dark, and somewhere far away, a deep roar echoed, then faded. The human walked without a torch, moving as if the darkness was his ally. His boots sank into damp earth, and his hand brushed aside low branches without slowing. Behind him, far enough to avoid being seen, the hooded alien woman followed. Her steps were silent, her breathing slow. She had learned long ago that in this jungle, noise could get you killed. Hours passed before they reached a clearing. At its center stood an old stone platform, covered in vines and moss. Carvings on the stones showed strange beasts with twisted horns and eyes like fire. The human stopped, studying the marks as if he understood their meaning. From the shadows, the woman's eyes narrowed. She had seen drawings like these in ancient archives. They told stories of creatures that were not born in this world but made for war. The Gravern was one of them. Before she could step closer, a sound rippled through the trees. Heavy footsteps, slow but deliberate. The human turned his head slightly, but did not move away from the platform. The woman held her breath. Out of the darkness came the Gravern. Not the one from before, but larger, its horns chipped and scarred. Its eyes burned in the moonlight, and its armored hide gleamed wet with dew. It stepped into the clearing, its head low, the earth trembling beneath its weight. The human did not reach for a weapon. He stepped forward, each movement calm and measured. The Gravern let out a low growl that made the woman's bones ache. The sound seemed to push against her chest, making her heart race. Then the beast charged. The ground shook as it closed the distance, horns aimed at the man's chest. The woman moved forward instinctively, her hand reaching for the small plasma blade hidden in her cloak, but the human didn't need her help. At the last moment, he shifted his body sideways, one foot sliding back, one hand gripping the beast's horn as its head passed inches from his side. His other hand slammed against its neck. Using its own momentum to spin it, the Gravern stumbled. Crashing into the side of the stone platform, the beast roared in rage, swinging its head and snapping at the air. The human darted in close. Too close for its horns to be of use, his arms locked around its thick neck, its muscles straining but steady. The Gravern thrashed, its claws tearing into the earth, dirt and roots flying into the air. The woman could barely believe what she was seeing. Every movement was precise. Not wasted, not rushed. The human wasn't fighting with brute force alone. He was reading the beast, predicting its next move before it made it. Finally, with a sound like a tree snapping, the Gravern collapsed to its knees. The human shifted his grip, forcing it down until it lay on its side, breathing hard, defeated but alive. The woman stepped forward now, her hood falling back as she approached. "You do this without weapons," she said softly, without fear. The human glanced at her, his eyes sharp even in the dim light. "Weapons make you lazy," he replied. "Fear makes you slow." She studied him for a moment, then looked at the gravern. "You could have killed it," she said. "I don't kill unless I have to," he answered. "And this one? It's just a guardian." Her brow furrowed. "A guardian for what?" He nodded toward the platform. "Something your council would rather not see." Before she could ask more, the jungle around them shifted, the sound of branches breaking, the faint shimmer of energy fields. They were not alone. Figures emerged from the trees, armored, armed, and moving with military precision. The woman recognized the crest on their shoulders. The city's elite guard. Sent by the council, the leader of the squad stepped forward, blaster aimed at the human. "You are ordered to come with us," he said, his voice cold. The human's expression didn't change. He slowly stepped away from the gravern, his hands at his sides, but his stance ready. The woman moved between him and the guards. "You can't take him," she said sharply. "He is a danger to the city," the guard replied, "and the council will decide what to do with him." The human tilted his head slightly, as if considering his options. Then, in one smooth motion, he stepped past the woman, right into the line of armed soldiers, and smiled. "If the council wants to see me," he said, "I'll give them a show they'll never forget." The soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. The gravern lay still in the background, the jungle silent except for the distant cry of some unseen predator. The woman knew then that whatever happened next would shake the city, maybe the entire world. The city's great square had not been this crowded in years. From the high stone balconies to the lowest market roofs, beings of every shape and color gathered. The air was thick with noise, shouts, arguments. The metallic hum of security drones drifting overhead. At the center of it all stood the human, barehanded, no armor, no visible weapons beside him. The hooded alien woman now stood without her disguise, her violet eyes scanning the crowd for threats. Around them, the elite guard formed a loose ring, keeping the spectators from getting too close. High above, on a raised platform draped in the council's banners, the leaders of the city watched. Their faces were unreadable, but their voices carried through hidden amplifiers. They declared the terms of the challenge. The human would face another gravern, larger and more dangerous than the last, here in the square, with the entire city watching. The human simply nodded. His calm unsettled many in the crowd. There were whispers that he was insane, others that he was a god. The woman beside him leaned closer, her voice low. "They want to prove you're just a fluke," she said. "Then let's give them something else to talk about," he replied. The gates at the far end of the square opened. The noise of the crowd faded into a heavy silence. From the shadows of the holding cage came the deep, rumbling growl of the gravern. This one was darker, its horns longer, its eyes burning like embers. It stepped into the light with a slow, deliberate pace, every muscle under its armor-plated hide shifting with power. Chains clinked as handlers guided it forward, but the beast strained against them, snapping its jaws the moment they unlatched the restraints. The gravern threw its head forward and roared. The sound shook the air, dust falling from the high walls around the square. The human didn't flinch. He stepped forward, the distance between him and the beast closing with each calm stride. The gravern pawed at the ground, its massive body coiled like a spring. When it charged, the square became chaos. Spectators gasped, some stumbling back from the railings. The human moved, not away, but directly into its path. His body shifted at the last second, one hand gripping the base of its horn, the other driving into the side of its neck. The Gravern tried to gore him, swinging its head violently, but he moved with emotion, using its own strength to keep from being thrown. The two were locked in a brutal dance, dirt flying claws. Scraping stone, the air filled with the beast's growls and the human's steady breaths. From her place on the edge of the ring, the woman could see it. The human wasn't just fighting. He was teaching the crowd something every move he made. Showed control, not desperation. He didn't rush to end it. He let them see every moment. Every risk, every decision, the Gravern lunged again. Its horns scraping the stone floor. The human ducked under its head, wrapping both arms around its throat. The crowd roared, some in awe, some in fear. The beast thrashed, slamming him against the ground hard enough to crack stone, but he held on. Minutes passed, sweat and dust mixing on his skin. The Graveorn's movement slowed, its growls turning to strained breaths. Finally, with a last shove, he forced the beast to the ground, pinning it with one knee across its neck. He didn't strike the killing blow. He simply held it there, alive. But defeated, the square erupted into noise, half cheering, half shouting. The council members leaned toward one another. Speaking quickly, the woman stepped into the ring. Her eyes locked on the human. "You could have killed it," she said again. Her voice sharper this time. "And I told you before," he replied. "I don't kill unless I have to," before either could say more. A sound cut through the noise, a slow clap, deep and deliberate. It came from the balcony just below the council platform. A tall alien in ornate armor stepped forward. His voice carried easily over the crowd. "Interesting," he said. "Very interesting." The woman's face tightened. She knew who this was, the council's war commander, a man who saw everything. In terms of battle and conquest, the commander's gaze stayed on the human. "You fight like you were born for this," he said. "I could use someone like you." "I'm not for hire," the human replied. The commander smiled faintly. "Everyone has a price, human." The woman stepped between them. "He's not here for your games," she said. The commander ignored her. "Think about it," he said, then turned and disappeared into the council chamber. The crowd's attention returned to the human, but the mood had shifted. It was no longer just awe or fear. Now there was curiosity and something like hope, but the woman could feel the danger in it. The more they watched him, the more the powerful would want to control him. As the guards led them from the square, she whispered to him, "You've just made yourself the most valuable and the most dangerous man in this city." He glanced at her, a faint smile on his lips. "Good," he said. "That means I'm doing something right." Asterisk. Night fell over the city like a slow tide. The cheers from the square were gone now, replaced by the hum of quiet streets and the occasional bark of a watchbeast in the distance. The human sat alone in a small stone room the council had provided. For him, the walls were bare, the window barred, and the door locked from the outside. He wasn't worried. His hands rested loosely on his knees, eyes half closed, breathing slow. He knew the room wasn't for comfort. It was for control. The council wanted him contained until they decided what to do next. Outside, in the narrow hallway, footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. A key scraped against the lock. The door swung open, and the hooded alien woman stepped in. Her face was tense, her eyes scanning the corners of the room before settling. "On him, they will try tonight," she said quietly. "Try what?" he asked, his voice calm. "To take you or kill you." "If they can't," she replied. He didn't move. "And you're warning me because?" Her jaw tightened. "Because you're the only one who can stop what's coming before he could answer." A faint metallic hiss came from the vent above the door. A thin mist curled down into the room. The woman's eyes widened. "Gas," she whispered. The human moved instantly, grabbing her wrist and pulling her toward the barred window. Without a word, he wrapped both hands around one of the thick metal bars. his muscles tensed, and with a sound like snapping bone, the bar bent outward. He kicked the gap wider, just enough for them to slip through. They dropped into the narrow alley behind the council hall. The smell of damp stone and burning oil filled the air. Shadows moved. On the rooftops above, armored figures with crossbows and rifles tracking their movement. "They planned this well," the woman muttered. "Not well enough," the human replied. Already moving down the alley, they turned a corner only to find 3 guards blocking the path. Their weapons were drawn, but their eyes showed hesitation. The human stepped forward, catching the first strike on his forearm before slamming his shoulder into the attacker's chest. The man went down hard. The second guard tried to stab from behind, but the human spun, catching the wrist and twisting until the weapon clattered to the ground. The third guard froze, then backed away, vanishing into the shadows. They kept moving until the alleys opened into the old quarter, where buildings leaned close together and the streets were too narrow for council patrols. Here, the air smelled of spices and smoke, and lanterns glowed in windows like watchful eyes. The woman led him into a low, crooked house, locking the door behind them. Inside, the walls were lined with books, maps, and strange devices. She lit a single lamp, casting their shadows long across the floor. "This is my safe place," she said. No council eyes, no listening drones. He glanced around. "You've been watching me since the Graveron." "Longer," she admitted. "I've been studying humans for years. Your strength, your instincts, your difference." He leaned against the wall. "Why?" "Because the Gravern aren't animals," she said, her voice low. "They're weapons. Built by something older than this city, older than most worlds we know." He listened without speaking. "They were made for war, and now they're waking up again," she continued. "The council doesn't want to stop it. They want to control it. They think they can use the Graveorn against their enemies, but they don't understand what they're dealing with. And you think I do?" He asked. Her eyes met his. "You fight them differently. You don't fear them. You break them without breaking yourself. You're the only one I've seen who can stand in front of one and walk away." He crossed his arms. "So, what's your plan?" She hesitated. "There's a place in the jungle deeper than where the council dares to go. The old laboratories are still there. If we can reach them, we can destroy the machines that are making more Gravern." The silence between them stretched. Then he asked, "And if we don't?" Her answer was almost a whisper. "Then soon there will be more Gravern than soldiers, and no one will be able to stop them from outside." A sharp knock echoed against the door, followed by another, slower, heavier. The woman's eyes widened. That was not a friend's signal. The human stepped to the side of the door. Muscles coiled when it opened. 2 armored figures stepped inside, blades drawn. Their eyes flicked toward the woman, then toward him. Neither one left the house. When it was over, the human stood in the doorway, looking into the dark street. "We leave now," he said. The woman grabbed a pack from the shelf and slung it over her shoulder. She didn't ask where they were going. She already knew. The jungle waited, and so did whatever truth lay in its deepest shadows. The jungle was different here. The air was thicker, heavy with the smell of wet earth and something sharp. Like metal left too long in the rain, the trees were taller, their trunks black and smooth, their roots twisting together like muscles beneath the soil. Every step felt like entering a place that did not want them. The human moved in silence, scanning the ground before each footstep. The alien woman followed, her pack light but filled with carefully chosen tools. Her violet eyes shifted constantly between the shadows and the path ahead. They both knew that whatever waited here was not just a wild beast. Hours passed without seeing a single animal, not even the hum of insects. The silence pressed against their ears until it was almost a sound of its own. Somewhere far ahead, a faint, rhythmic thud echoed, like a slow heartbeat. They reached a ridge where the trees gave way to broken stone. Huge slabs of ancient walls lay half buried in moss. Carvings covered them, the same twisted beasts they had seen before. But here the shapes were sharper, more deliberate. Weapons? In claws, fire and mouths. "This is it," she said quietly. "The old labs are below." The human studied the ruins, his eyes narrowing. "Then why do I feel like something's still guarding it?" They descended a set of cracked stairs carved into the earth. The air grew colder, and the faint heartbeat sound grew louder. A faint light pulsed from somewhere deep inside. The first chamber was vast, the ceiling lost in darkness, rows of metal. Pods stood in lines, each one big enough to hold a gravern. Some were shattered, their glass fronts blown outward, claw marks scoring the steel. Others still glowed faintly. Something moving in the mist inside, the woman moved to one of the pods. Brushing her fingers across the surface, "These are newer than I expected," she said. "The council must have restarted them." The human's jaw tightened, or never. Stopped, a low growl came from the far end of the room. They turned as one. A gravern stepped into the light, but its armor was darker, its body leaner, faster. The human could see metal fused with its hide. Plates that moved like part of its skin. It didn't roar, it didn't rush. It just watched them, head low, eyes glowing. The woman took a slow step back. "This one's different," she whispered. The human didn't move. "Yeah," he said. "It knows we're not here by accident." The beast shifted, muscles rippling. Then it was gone, moving so fast it was almost a blur. The human shoved the woman aside as claws tore through the spot she'd been standing. He caught one of its horns with both hands, his boots skidding. Across the floor, the fight was nothing like the square. This wasn't a test or a show. This was survival. The gravern struck with precision, aiming for his throat, his legs. Trying to drive him into the pods, the human used the momentum, twisting its head and slamming it into a metal column hard enough to dent the steel. The woman darted toward a control panel, her fingers flying over cracked keys. "If I can open the drain valves, I can flood the chamber with coolant gas. It'll slow it down." She called. "Do it," he shouted back, gripping the beast's horn as it tried to wrench free. A hiss filled the room. White mist spilling across the floor. The gravern roared, its movements jerking, slower now, but still dangerous. The human took the chance, driving his knee into its neck and forcing it down. The beast's claws scraped against the floor, leaving deep scars in the metal when it finally went still. The human stepped back, breathing hard. The woman shut down the valves, the mist fading. "That wasn't a normal gravern," she said. "No," he replied, looking toward the shadows at the back of the chamber. "And I don't think it was the only one from deeper in the ruins." More shapes began to move. The sound of claws on stone echoed through the dark. The woman's voice was tight. "We can't fight them all." The human glanced at the pods, then at the control panel. "We're not going to." She frowned. "What do you end this?" he said, moving toward the controls. She understood then. Her fingers moved with his, entering override commands she'd memorized years ago but never dared to use. The pods began to shake, warning lights flashing red. Somewhere far above, a deep rumble started. "They'll collapse the whole place if they know we were here," she said. "Then we don't give them the chance," he answered. A roar louder than the others shook the chamber. The guards of the lab were coming fast. The human grabbed her arm, pulling her toward a side tunnel as the floor began to crack. Metal screamed, glass shattered. And the last thing they saw before the ceiling gave way was a wave of white mist rolling over the pods, swallowing the creatures. Inside, they emerged into the jungle again, under a sky heavy with clouds. The ruins behind them sank into the earth with a sound like thunder. The woman bent over, catching her breath. "We destroyed it," she said. "For now," he replied. But something tells me that was just one nest. Asterisk. The storm hit before they reached the city. Rain hammered the leaves, turning the jungle paths into rivers of mud. Thunder rolled overhead like the growl of something huge and angry. The human moved quickly, his boots sinking into the soft earth. The alien woman followed close behind, her hood pulled low, but her eyes never leaving the shadows. They both knew the council would already know what happened at the ruins. Word traveled faster than any storm, and destroying the Gravern lab would not be forgiven. By the time they reached the outer walls, the gates were shut. Torches burned along the battlements, and armored guards lined the walls. The air smelled of wet stone and metal from the highest balcony. The war commander watched them, his expression unreadable. The gates opened slowly, not in welcome, but in challenge. The human walked through first, rain dripping from his hair. The woman followed, her steps careful. Inside, the square was silent. The crowd that had once cheered and shouted now stood still, watching. The council waited on their high platform. Their robes darkened by rain, the commander stepped forward, his voice carrying easily across the space. "You destroyed something that belonged to this city," he said. "I destroyed something that should never have existed." The human replied, "You think you understand our enemies better than we do?" The commander asked, "I understand monsters," the human said, his voice calm but hard. "And the Gravern aren't tools. They're a war that will eat you alive." The council murmured among themselves. The commander's gaze never left him. "You could have joined us," he said. "You could have led armies, taken worlds. Instead, you choose defiance." The woman stepped forward. "He chose survival for all of us," she said sharply. "Your greed would have unleashed something you couldn't control." The commander raised a hand, cute, and soldiers stepped forward, weapons drawn. The crowd tensed, the rain falling harder. The human didn't move. His eyes swept the soldiers, reading them, measuring them. "You can kill me," he said, "but you'll still have the Gravern problem. And when the next one comes, you won't have anyone left who can face it." Something shifted in the crowd. A low murmur spread, voices rising. Some shouted his name. Others called for the council to stand down. The commander's jaw tightened. He could feel the mood slipping from his control. Then the sound came deep, rolling, and close. It wasn't thunder. It was a roar from the open jungle gates behind them. A Gravern appeared, massive and furious. Its eyes burned in the stormlight, its claws cutting furrows in the wet stone. The crowd screamed. Soldiers turned, weapons lifting. The commander barked orders, but the beast charged before they could form a line. The human moved first. His body was a blur as he closed the distance, meeting the Gravern head-on. The impact shook the square. The two locked in a brutal struggle. Claws against muscle, horns against bone, rain slicked their bodies, steam rising where the beast's breath hit the cold air. The woman shouted something, her voice lost in the storm. She was moving toward the beast's flank, her blade flashing in the lightning. The human held the Gravern's head, straining against its strength, giving her the opening she needed. With a bounce, with a final surge, they forced the beast back, driving it toward the gate. The human twisted, slamming it into the stone wall. The Gravern roared one last time before collapsing, its body shaking the ground. The square was silent, except for the rain. The human stood over the fallen beast, chest rising and falling. He turned to the commander. "That's what you were planning to control," he said. "Tell me you still think it's worth it." The commander looked at him, then at the crowd. The faces staring back at him were no longer loyal. They were afraid, not of the Gravern, but of him. Slowly, he stepped back, signaling the soldiers to lower their weapons. The council murmured again, but this time their words were uncertain. The human walked to the woman's side. The storm had already begun to fade. "It's not over," she said quietly. "It never is," he replied. They left the square together. The crowd partying for them. No one tried to stop them, not even. The commander, his eyes followed them until they disappeared into the streets. A shadow of something he could not control, and somewhere beyond the walls, deep in the jungle. Another roar echoed, low and distant, a promise that the fight was only beginning. Asterisk.